Yo, what's going on, everybody? Hope you're having a fantastic day. Today I just wanted to come on here and do a bit of a support item tier list for OB28. I know that we're getting OB29 soon with Morgan Le Fay coming out, and there's going to be some interesting changes. We'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the video. But I think overall, a lot of the support items have been very good over the last several patches, and I don't think they've really shifted a whole lot from patch to patch. You know, a couple changes to certain items here and there, but I think overall this is kind of remained steady, and I kind of expect it to remain steady. You know, maybe some things will change, maybe they won't, but I kind of figured, you know, let's go ahead and make this item tier list. If it blows up and changes, we can make some adjustments, we can make some changes, but I think overall it's probably going to look largely similar. I kind of have all the items broken down here by their different classes, you know, so you got like your starter, Fizz Prot, HP item, Magic Prot, Dual Prots. Some of these could maybe go into different categories or slide around, you know, whatever. But kind of the plan is to go through each one and then kind of compare them so you can see like what the comparison is for those specific items. Because, you know, generally when you're playing support, you're looking like, oh, okay, I need my Fizz item now, or oh, I need a Magic item, or I need an HP item. That's kind of how you're doing your trade-off analysis when you're looking to buy an item. So I think breaking it down this way will be helpful. But we'll kind of go through the different classes. I'm going to put starters off to the end, and we're going to talk about some of the changes in OB29. But we'll go through everything here. So without further ado, here we go. All right, so we're going to start with the FizzD items, and we're just going to kind of go left to right here. And I'll just talk about each item, if I think it's good, if I think it's not, if I think it's niche, and we'll kind of explain it. So I would say when you're looking at this tier list, I think it's definitely important to take into context the words I'm saying and not just where it ranks on the tier list. A quick glance at this, you might not understand the full picture, so definitely stick around, hear the explanation. But first, we're going to start with Regrowth Striders. I think, honestly, Regrowth Striders is a pretty strong item. It's got good defense stats, it's got some cooldown, it's got a good passive. I think the biggest downside to it right now is just like, you know, it's not really applicable on everybody. Not every character is going to use this item super well. Additionally, I think there are better FizzD items that you'll probably be building every game in this slot. For certain gods, you know, maybe your ones with movement speed changes, so like your E-sets, or maybe your ones with heals, maybe like Sylvanas, you know, maybe there's a couple gods that maybe we build this on, but there's probably some better options. So I think we're going to put Regrowth Striders in the B tier. Moving on, Stampede. I'm going to be honest, I think Stampede's been the best item, probably one of the best items in the entire game for almost an entire year. I think like last January patch, honestly, it was really broken. And I think ever since then, it's been really broken. It's got good fizz stats. It's got HP. It's got HP 5. The active item itself is just so strong. It's on such a low cooldown. It's good into so many abilities. It makes some characters totally useless, like Ganesha just completely struggles into this item. I think this item is absolutely S tier and might possibly be one of the best items in the entire game. One more thing that I forgot to mention about Stampede, I just want to remind everybody that this item is only 2,400 gold. I think one of the things that we should be prioritizing in the support role is as many low-cost items as possible. Pretty much anything under 2,500, if it has good stats and it's under 2,500 gold, that's definitely an item that we should be looking at. So 2,400 gold, Stampede with everything else that it has on it, definitely in the S tier. Moving on next to Spectral. Spectral, I think, has had a little bit of a power creep over the last several patches, both Spectral Armor and then now its counterpart, Spectral Visage. But I mean, if you look at the stats on this thing, 30 physical prots, 400 max health, and then the passive, I mean, the passive on this thing, having attack speed debuff and critical strike debuff is extremely, extremely strong. It makes it really difficult for ADCs to play. If you manage to get in a situation where you can build this item early, maybe you're not bound to going that Stampede early, and you can get a Spectral, I think this is a great first item. I think it can be a good second item. I think this item is super strong and probably should be built most games, even sometimes if there's no crit in the game. So for that reason, Spectral's also going in the S tier. Last thing about Spectral, again, part of the reason this item's so strong and part of the reason you can go it first, this item's only 2,300 gold. It's one of the cheaper, if not like the cheapest items that a support can realistically start. And again, just another reason why it's probably one of the best items in the role. Up next, Breastplate of Valor. Still a really strong item. 35 Fizz Prots, 200 mana, 2 mana regen. Got some cooldown rate and a good passive. This item is very strong at certain times, you know, especially in support. Like, we're valuing the active items, we're valuing the utility items, and we don't always really have the space for the breastplate. That being said, there's a lot of gods that use this really well. Any gods where you're looking for like the cooldown spam, so you're thinking about like your Guan Yu, your Odin, any characters that have mana problems. So you've got like your Aphrodite. I know there's a Neja build going around with breastplate and Genjis. You know, maybe that's more of a solo thing, but maybe do it in support. I think the item's really strong. It's pretty cheap too, 2,400 gold. Yeah, and then again for a breastplate, super cheap, good stats, except just not everyone's building it. Sometimes we're building that Spectral, sometimes we're building the Stampede. So I think for that reason, I'm going to put it in A tier just because of how often we get to use it, but still a super strong item. All right, moving on. Next item, Glad Shield. I do think this is a pretty strong item. 2,400 gold, 2,450, I think. 25 Fizz Prots, 200 health. It's got some cooldown. And then the passive's pretty good. You know, you're doing some additional physical damage based on your item prots. I think there are certain gods that use this well. You know, sometimes we see maybe like a Yamoja going in and doing some additional damage. Any of your bruiser characters, you know, maybe you could slap this on. But I think generally, kind of like I was alluding to before, there's cheaper items, there's more stat efficient items, and there's items that can be used more all around by the other characters. So I think Glad Shield is going to end up in C tier. All right, this item's a little off meta for supports, but I actually think it's important to include. Helm of Radiance. It's 2,500 gold. So, you know, it's a little kind of almost out of the price range for supports in my opinion. But I think if you're in a scenario where you're playing into a 4-Fizz comp and you're on a high int scaling character, so for example, Yamoja, for example, Eset, you know, some of those similar characters. I think if you're into a 4-Fizz comp and you want a nice statted intelligence item, you could definitely probably fit Helm of Radiance in there. That being said, as I've said many times so far, I think there are better items, better Fizz items that we're going to look to almost every game. So I think for that reason, it's also going to go in C tier. All right, moving on. Last one in the physical tier, we have Leviathan's Hide. 2,500 gold. We have 40 Fizz Prots. 250 health. And then the passive that has changed a little bit. If you're damaged by a god attack, that god loses 10% strength and attack speed for 4 seconds. If you attack an enemy god, you get +8 max health permanently. I think there are a lot of people who like this item, especially if you're into like a 4-Fizz comp, or if you're into a comp against a bunch of ADCs. You know, maybe they have like 3 hunters on their team or something. Again, I mean, I personally have never really been a big fan of this item. If you want to be a big fan of this item, that's fine. I think it's still pretty niche when you're going to build it. I think, again, there's better FizzD items that you could just be building. You know, we could just be building Spectral, for example. We could just be building Stampede. This one's going to go into the C tier, but maybe there's argument to move it up. Okay, moving on down to what I consider the HP items. Again, some of these can kind of move across item classes, but this is kind of what we're going to go with for now. Hexstone. I think Hexstone's been one of the stronger items in the last year of Smite 2. 250 max health, 4 health regen, 10 cooldown, and obviously the active, we turn into a pig, we do damage, we get CC immunity, we get 60 of each prot, and then if we hit an enemy god, they're knocked up, you get bonus damage equivalent to your health, and then also the active is back up in an additional 40 seconds. And this cooldown without the minus 40 second is 120 seconds. So 2 minutes. And that can go down to a little over a minute. This item has so much text on it. Usually when an item has a lot of text, that means it's really good. I think Hexstone is probably something you should be considering building almost every game. It's been a little overshadowed recently by Aegis, I think. You know, some supports are opting, you know, instead of this survivability tool, maybe I want a different survivability tool, which is fine. I still personally really love Hexstone. I think it's really good, especially on your immobile characters. Keeps you super safe. If you're playing into an Ares, you're playing into any of these other characters that can kind of trap you and you can get out of it. Maybe you're playing into a Hades and you're Ymir. Like, this is just your item. This is what you're buying. And for that reason, for the stats, I think it's going to go S tier. There could be a little bit of a debate. This item is expensive. 2,750. Like I said before, it's over 2,500. I think it's a little too expensive for a support item, but you're getting so much for that investment. So I think we're still going to keep it in S tier. All right, moving on to the next item, Yogi's Necklace. I think this one, people have known it's strong. I think it's still probably underrated, but we still might underrate it just because I think there's better items. Yogi's Necklace, 2,250 gold. So second lowest gold item for supports, really, outside of Thebes. Super cheap. 325 max health, 250 max mana, 6 health regen, 6 mana regen, and the passive gain 0.5% of your max health per per second. I think this item is really strong. It's been really strong. It will continue to be strong. I think the problem that I have with it is there's no prots and there's no cooldown. And those are two things that we're kind of looking for in support. We're looking for prots, cooldown, active items. We're kind of not getting that out of this. That being said, the stats and the passive for the cost, I think it's really, really cost efficient. So we're going to put it in A tier. But I think some of these items overshadow it, and there's just not enough item slots in the game to justify building this every game. All right, moving on next here to Chandra's Grace. This is kind of a newer item in Smite 2. I think it's kind of made a resurgence recently, specifically because of Guan Yu. I'm seeing a lot of people build this on Guan Yu support, but there's a couple other supports that probably use it pretty well. It's 2,300 gold, has 350 health, 20 cooldown rate, and then the passive every 30 seconds, the lowest health ally within the area gets 20 regen, 20 mana regen, and then they gain their cooldowns for a little bit. And then during Moonlight phase, you also get this buff. I think people are mostly buying this for the cooldown and the cost. So it's a 2,300 gold item with 20 cooldown, which is super cost efficient. I think for the most part, this item's really strong, but we're only picking it on a couple of characters, and it's probably mostly Guan Yu right now. Maybe there's a couple other ones that you would consider buying this on, but I think for that reason, it's a really strong item, but it's kind of a niche item. We're going to go A tier. All right, moving on next, we have Amanita Charm. This is also a really cheap item, 2,350 gold, and it has a ton of stats, ton of words on this item. 15 Fizz Prot, 15 Magical Prot, 300 max health, 4 health regen, and then the active effect, whenever you drop this thing, everyone in the radius gets a 3% health heal, 10% mitigations per regular abilities and basic attacks, and 5% mitigations per ultimate. This thing ticks 3 times over the 4.5 seconds. So overall, that's like 30 mits plus the heal. It's on a 60-second cooldown. We're getting a ton of health. We're getting some dual prots. It's super cheap. Again, I think there's items that outshine this. For that reason, we're going to go A tier. All right, moving on. Contagion, 2,400 gold, 425 health, 6 health regen. If you're damaged, you gain a stack. If they life steals from you, you get a bunch of stacks. And then next time you hard CC them, you get to do a % magic damage based on your health. I mean, this item might be fine. It's probably not that good. And there's just way better items. This is just going in C tier. All right, next item, Heartwood Charm. This one's a little bit more on the expensive side, 2,650 gold. But it does have a lot of stats, 400 max health, 250 max mana, 10 cooldown rate. It's got a pretty good passive effect for healing abilities, and then the active, you kind of can use your healing ability again. I think this item's super niche. It's probably only ever getting bought on Afro, and even then, I don't even know if it's good. I'm pretty sure this is just going in C tier. All right, last item in the HP tree here, we have Gauntlet of Thebes, the Smite 1 classic, but in Smite 2, it's definitely fallen off quite a bit. This item is one of the cheapest items you can get in the entire game, I think. 2,200 gold. On base stats, it has 200 max health, 150 max mana, and then you gain stacks by assisting minions or killing gods or assisting gods. And then once the item evolves, you get a whole lot more health. The problem with this item compared to all the other ones we have up here, you know, your Stampede, your Spectral, whatever it is, this item is so slow. Even though it's 2,200 gold, these ones are only 2,400, 2,300. They're still super cheap. So you're not really getting any spike with this. And then even once it's stacking, you're not really getting a spike. So the item's just way too slow. If you're a support building Thebes and you're playing into a guy that has Stampede, I mean, you're just being outclassed every time. I think this item is virtually unbuildable always. This is going to go in D tier. All right, moving on to the Magic T section. Oni Hunter's Garb. This item's 2,500 gold. You get 40 magical prots, 150 health, 200 mana, 8 mana regen. And then for every god within a certain distance, you get 4% mits. So that's a total of 12% mitigations. Basically while you're in fights. I think it's a super strong item. However, it's going to be outclassed. So for that reason, we're going to put it in B tier. All right, next item, Genji's. This is 2,350 gold, so pretty cheap. You get 50 magic prots, 200 mana, 5 mana regen, 15 cooldown, and plus the passive, where if you get hit by a magic ability, you get a flat 3-second reduction on all your cooldowns with a cooldown, an internal cooldown of 15 seconds. I think this item's super strong, been super strong, really cheap. It might be outshined by a couple other items, and on some characters, you don't want to build this. Obviously, Yamoja, for example, breastplate and Genjis don't work. So this is kind of an item that you wouldn't want to be building on her. Overall, I think you can build this on most characters and it's really good. For me, this is going to wind up in A tier. All right, moving on next is Ancile. I think this is it's a pretty good item. It had a lot more prevalence before, but it's been nerfed several times. As it stands, it's 2,500 gold, 55 magic prot, 300 health, and then the active effect where your next ability silences the enemy for 1.5 seconds, and then it's on a 70-second cooldown. I think for certain characters, this item is probably a must build. Maybe Ganesh, you're using it on the Ganesh ult. It's pretty strong for that. You know, maybe there's some games where you want to build this, but in general, I think Gargoyle, which we'll get to, is probably a better item. Genji's, which we already talked about, probably a better item. I think this one's a little more niche, but it's strong. We'll put it in B tier. All right, we already talked about Spectral before. This is basically the same thing, but magic version. 2,300 gold, 35 match prots, 400 max health, and then the same passive, reducing attack speed, reducing crit damage. Like I said before, this item's so cheap. It's super powerful. If you're playing in a lane versus a magic ADC, so maybe like Geb Aspect right now is super prevalent, you could totally start this first item. It's really good. If you, for example, maybe you built Stampede first, but they have a Mercury and a Jingwei, and you know they're going to be building crit, but you also need magic damage for their mid laner and their support or whatever, you could go this second, and then you still get the critical reduction and the attack speed reduction, but you also have some Mag D. So you can kind of mix and match this. You don't always have to go the magic one for Geb Aspect and go the physical one for, you know, your traditional hunter. You can mix and match depending on what kind of prot you need because the passives are the same. So for that reason, S tier. All right, Phoenix Feather. I don't see a ton of people building this item, but I think it's better than what people are giving it credit for. 2,400 gold, so again, relatively cheap. 35 magic prot, 300 health, and then the active, basically we're dealing true damage to people near us for some reason, but I think the heal is really what we're looking for. It's a pretty strong heal. I think the item's probably stronger than people give it credit for, but there's probably better options. Yeah, I don't know if I would put it on the same tier as the A tier items. I think we'll go ahead and put it in B tier. All right, Gargoyle. If you see me on stream, I'm building this almost every game. Chat keeps kind of asking me why. I know a couple players moved away from it, but I think this item is broken. It's 2,400 gold, 50 magic prot, 15 cooldown. And then the active effect, we're silencing people in front of us for 1 second. And then additionally, we're prot shredding them, 10% of their prots for 4 seconds. So even if you're not really utilizing the silence really well, if you're engaging a fight, Gargoyle someone, shred their prots, super good. And then during the Moonlight phase, it hits in a circle around you, so it's not just the cone in front. And then the silence lasts a little bit longer, 1.5 seconds. And then the protection shred is a little bigger, 15% prots. And this item is on a 90-second cooldown, so it's up very often. I think for the price point, the active item, cooldown the stats, I think this is just an S tier item. I build it almost every game. That and Stampede, I think, are kind of the standouts right now. So those are usually kind of two of my first two items almost every game. Moving on, Shoguns, 2,500 gold, 30 match prot, 200 health, 15% attack speed, and then a passive effect, an additional 20% attack speed for you and your allies. I think this item's super niche. I don't think it's statted very well. I don't think it's very good. It's probably C tier. All right, wrapping it up here for the magic defense section. This is kind of a little bit of a luxury item, but Sphere of Negation has been getting pretty popular recently. I think especially if you're going into comps with 4 magical, this is something you should be looking at. And again, it's one of those items, if you have a high int scaling into 4 magical, this kind of item I'd be looking for. It's 50 magic prots, 400 int, and then it has a passive effect where you gain 2% of your max health as a magical shield every 3 seconds, and that stacks up to 14% of your maximum health. So again, this is just a shield for magic damage, but it's still really strong. At the end of the day, though, this item is a luxury item with being 2,750 gold. So it's kind of expensive. I think it's a really strong item, but we're a little bit priced out in support. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in A tier. All right, moving on to the dual prot items. We have Eye of Providence. This used to be a really, really strong item. It was kind of one of the standouts for supports. Everyone was kind of using it as the new Thebes. It was the new first item every game. I think mostly because of the active, and we'll talk about that. But first, the items, 2,300 gold, 25 of each prot, 250 max health, and then kind of the passive effect. Anytime you destroy a ward, you get an additional 50 gold. On active use, you kind of place an additional ward down. A lot of people were using this just to get vision and ruling around the map, but I think just other items right now have outclassed it. You know, if you're playing into someone who has Stampede or a different active item that's a little more in there, I think it's a lot stronger. Unfortunately, this just kind of slipped out of the meta. I think I'm going to put it in C tier. All right, Erosion. I think this item's super slept on right now. 2,400 gold, 30 Fizz Prot, 20 Magic Prot, 250 max health, and it takes away 30% of all shields that are applied to enemy gods within 11 meters. When this occurs, you get 10% of your Fizz and Magic Prots for 6 seconds, and this can stack twice. If you're playing into a comp that has shields, Nemesis, Odin, Geb, or they have shells, or maybe there's a Hecate, anyone's giving any type of shield, maybe they're building Pridwin, whatever. I think this should probably slot in your build. Probably not like too early on. It's probably a 3rd, 4th, 5th item, but I think this item's super strong. It's super cost effective. The passive of getting those prots in fights when people are using shells all the time, I think is super, super strong. Honestly, I think this item is so good, it's going to work its way at the S tier. All right, Prophetic Cloak. I see a lot of players, especially lower ranked players, building this item. If you think it's good, that's up to you, but I'm not really a big fan. I think overall, to be totally honest, this item, again, like Thebes, way too slow. It's not cost effective. There's way better items. I don't think this is buildable under any circumstance. It's going in D tier. All right, fan favorite, Magi's Cloak. 2,400 gold, 35 of each prots. Every 90 seconds, you get a bubble that protects against hard crowd control. Whenever it's triggered, you have CC immunity for 1.5 seconds. This has been and always will be a staple for supports. It's cheap, it's effective, it's a great item. It's S tier. All right, next up is Berserkers. 2,400 gold, 30 Fizz Prot, 15 Magic Prot, 20% attack speed. It's got a good passive, kind of a more niche item though. You know, you're only using it on your certain bruiser characters, Bologna's, maybe your Apollo support, I guess. I don't know. I just think it's a little too niche. It's a nice item. It's a good item, but it's a little too niche. So I think it's gonna go B tier for me. Next up is Pharaoh's Curse. 2,450 gold, 35 Fizz Prot, 25 Magic Prot, 15% attack speed, and then on use, you cut all the enemy shields in half. You slow them by 20%, cut their attack speed by 40%. The debuff lasts 4 seconds. You can use this every 45 seconds. I think, honestly, decent item. It's too niche. There's better items. I'm just kind of not really building it ever. I think, personally, this is a C tier item. Up next, another fan favorite, part of the robe tree, Spirit Robe. It's 2,500 gold, 25 of each prots. And when you get hit by a hard crowd control, you get 40 of each prot, and you heal 4% of your health over time. This item is really strong. It's been strong. Will continue to be strong. All the robes are strong. S tier. All right, lightning round. Here we go. Stygian Anchor. Decent price point. Decent stats. Weird passive. B tier. Stone of Binding.
Never build Stone of Binding.
Pridwin. Decent price point. Decent prots. Good cooldown. Good active. A tier. Freya's tiers. Little expensive. Good stats. Good cooldown. Decent passive. There are some better items though. B tier. Mantle of Discord. 2,600 gold. Decent prots. Has some cooldown. Stun passive. S tier. Bracken 2. Decent prots. Gives you mana. Very expensive. Interesting passive. C tier. Dwarven Plate. 40 of each prots. Protections passive. Active item. 2,800 gold. C tier. Hussar's Wings. 25 of each prot. 500 max health.
You are immune to slows. 3,500 gold.
Honestly, still A tier. All right, slowing it back down for these ones. First up in the other category, we have Scepter of Dominion. It's 2,400 gold. You get 30 int, 150 health, 200 mana, 3 mana regen, and then the active effect, create a zone that puts gods into stasis. Recently, this item I think got a lot better because the warm-up on it went down from, I think it was like 2 seconds down to 1 second, maybe. And I think that change has made this item a lot more viable, especially on any of your int characters. It's really good on like Afro, for example. You get the mana and you get the int. I think Yamoja is pretty strong. I think Isa is pretty strong. Baron is pretty strong. Sylvanas is pretty strong because you can still CC people while they're in the Dominion. So a lot of people put down the Dominion and then Sylvanas pull them. I think this is a really strong item. I think it's a high skill item and you have to be good at using it. But if you are good at using it, I think this is an S tier item. Moving on to Triton's Conch.
Breaking news. According to a new TMZ report, prolific rapper and business mogul Cash Krabs has been shot and killed outside of...
Moving on to Lifebinder. I know some people are still scarred from the Lifebinder meta.
Me personally, I stay Alton camps.
That was going on about a year ago, but I think this item, despite the nerfs, despite the changes, I think it's still really strong, and I think it's super underbuilt right now. It's 2,400 gold, so it's really cheap. 40 int, 300 max health, 3 health regen, fire projectile that does damage, mark the god, get a heal, get a shield. It's on a 20-second cooldown. It's great for all your int scalers. It's great for your emojis. It's great for your E-sets. Yeah, I know Aurora builds it on Odin a lot. I think it's a pretty useful item. I think there's a lot of gods that maybe even want to build this every game. And I think for that reason, we're going to go A tier. All right, last one, a little bit of a recently changed item is Brawlers.
Rest in peace, my granny, she got hit by a bazooka. Yeah.
Brawlers cost $25.50. I think most people associate this item being like a jungler anti-heal item, but it's kind of changed now. It's a little different. It has 15 of each prot, and then it has an adaptive stat. So whichever one's higher, 40 strength, 55 int.
She got hit by a bazooka. Yeah.
That's the stat you're gonna get. And then anytime you damage a god, you apply 25% healing reduction for 5 seconds. And then while you're in combat, there's an additional passive effect that gives you additional 2% strength, 2% int, and 2% prots, stacking up to 5 times. And then the stacks fall off one at a time. Again, kind of the text theory. There's a lot of text on this item. I think it's actually pretty good. I think it's kind of hard to fit in to the build because there's a lot of other items you want. But overall, I think this item's really, really strong. For me, it's an A tier. All right, moving on. I've talked about these in other videos, but we'll go through the Curios real quick. First one, $100 Sight. It's basically like a sweeper. Pulse a reveal area for 4 seconds. Pulses 4 times. It reveals enemies who are stealth, and then it also reveals wards. I think for support, this is kind of the staple Curio, because we're always trying to place sentry wards and get rid of enemy vision because we're safe enough to walk up and clear them ourselves. So I think for that reason, this is probably the best Curio for supports and the one that I'm building most of the time. That being said, you can switch these throughout the game, and you could even pick one at the start and pick a different one later. So the Bifrost shard is basically just a free ward every 90 seconds. I think in general, just more vision is good, more wards are good. There's some games where maybe I want a little bit more vision. I want to see if their jungler's coming early rather than clearing the wards. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll start and I'll place a Bifrost shard like on the buff camp, and then I'll go back to base and then swap for the $5 sight later. So that way I get the benefits of both. I think it's good. For me, I'm probably going Heimdall sight most of the time, but I think this is a strong A tier. Last and definitely least, in my opinion, is the Yaller Flare. I think it's really good. It's a traveling flare. It goes really far, gives you big vision. But the problem is it's not a standing ward. It doesn't last for a long duration of time. Once you use it, you don't have vision, and you're kind of wasting a vision slot. You know, some of your backliners are going to build it late game. More people are going to transition to using it, and I think that's fine. But for me, I don't think it's very good in support. So I'm going to put it in C tier. All right, moving on to the Relics. Purification beads. I think they're good. It's a staple. I think they're good. Are they good for support? Not really. I'm not really building it. I don't really think I'm ever building it. Yeah, I don't think I'm ever building a D tier. The upgrade, Talisman of Purification, it's 2,500 gold. You get the adaptive stats, so 7.5% of all stats from items. You get some cooldown, and then you get the team beads. Again, I think it's really hard to build this item. There's so many other items that you want in support. I think that this one isn't it. I think it's kind of on your carries right now to cleanse themselves. Maybe there's certain games where you need to buy this, but you really hate doing it. I think I'll put it C tier. It's not unbuyable, but I really don't want it. Blink, pretty strong. It has the kind of initiation component where if you damage a god afterward, you kind of get the 30 seconds off the use, which is cool. I think that there are better relics. I think that sometimes this is a necessary initiation tool, but I'm not really using a whole lot. I would probably go B tier. It's upgrade, Blinking Abyss. This has some more different adaptive stats, so it gives you strength or int, 25 or 45, depending on your highest item stat. 75% all stats from items. And then this is your combat blink, so you can use it in combat. It gives you additional damage on the blink. I think this one's good. I think there are situations where you want this. I think it's better than blink, but for the most part, I'm still really not buying it a whole lot. I'll put it in A tier, but I'm not really buying it a whole lot. Agility Relic, it's fun. I'm never buying it. D tier. Agility Greaves, they're fun. I'm never buying it. D tier. Aegis is really interesting right now. It finally got a bug fix. Maybe this is a couple patches ago, but it finally got the fix where you get the movement speed on use. 140-second cooldown. You're immune to damage. I think it's pretty good, and I think the upgrade's pretty good. Honestly, if you're one of the people that's buying this every game over Shell, I think that's okay. Depends on the matchup, but I think this item's pretty good. I'm going to go S tier. Similarly, the upgrade, Time Lock Aegis. This item is just kind of broken. You get 20 of each prots. The heal while you're time locked is insane. You're immune to damage for a really long time. You get your cooldowns back. You can end it early if you want. I think this item is super good. And a lot of people are building this a lot of games. I think it's going to go S tier. Sunder's fine. It's outshined by the other ones. I don't think I'm really ever building it D tier. Again, upgraded Sunder. It's outshined by the other items. Maybe some games I'm getting it for fun, but not really. I'll put it in C tier, but I don't think it's very good. Phantom Shell. It's just a staple of the game. You get a shield. You can walk through walls. You get mitigations. I think this has kind of always been the choice for supports as of late. I think it's really good. I would say you could go interchangeably with this and Aegis. It kind of depends on the game. If you need a shell, you need a shell. But I think it's really strong. I'm going to go S tier. Last one here, Shell of Rebuke. I get 20 of each prot, 7.5% stats from all items. You create a zone of mitigations, of 35% mitigations. When players walk in, whether they're in it or they walk into that field, you get the shield. And then additionally, they can pass through player-made walls. I think this one's like really strong. Again, like Time Lock Aegis, I see a lot of people kind of building it every game. I think it's definitely S tier. Okay, one thing that I don't really see a ton of players talk about is like how to prioritize the consumables and like as a support, like what consumables should I be getting? Items that are dropped in the game, should I be picking up? Which one shouldn't I be? So we'll kind of talk about these really quick. All right, first one's Eye of the Jungle, ping all enemy god locations on the minimap. It's fine for a support to pick this up. It's good sometimes, maybe you know when to use it better than your teammates. I think the issue is that sometimes this is holding up a consumable slot, and for supports, consumable slots are a little bit harder to come by than they are for like a backliner, for example. A lot of the games, they don't really have their stuff filled with either a chalice or, maybe you have a bomb or maybe you have a dagger that you can't drop, whatever. So I think in general, it's like good to pick these up. It's good to have them, but it's definitely not something that I'm making room for. And for that reason, I'll put it in A tier. Next up, Runic Bomb. I think generally this is probably best for a frontliner to have it because they can get close to the bird or tower or whatever you're blowing up. Additionally, it's good for Fire Giant, Gold Fury Secure, and I think it's kind of just best in the hands of a frontliner. I think for me, pretty much anytime this is up, I'm usually trying to grab it. So I think Runic Bomb goes in S tier. Obsidian Dagger, this one's kind of a weird one. I think really it depends on the team dynamic. If there's a backliner on your team who's really popping off and really wants the dagger and is going to use it well, I think it's really good on them. I think it's really good on tanks too. I think it's good on solo laners. It's good on supports. It kind of just depends on the game. It's not something that I'm always trying to grab because the support should have it, but I think it's really strong. I would probably put A tier. Health potions, there's really only one reason and one reason only to be buying health potions. I think the only instance in which I would buy a health potion is if, one, I don't have enough for chalice, and if that's the case, I'm probably doing something wrong, so I wouldn't do that. The only other example is if I'm Yamoja and I don't use multi-pots well. So then in addition to my chalice, I'm using 2 health potions. For that reason, I don't think it's very good. It's not unbuyable, but it's not very good. It's going in C tier. Regular wards, it's the staple. Really good. We've got to be buying these on back. I'll talk about this as well, just in the same breath, just so we can talk about it. Warding Chalice, I don't think supports can buy this item. Obviously, it's cost efficient once you place like 8 wards, but the problem is it's just taking up a consumable slot in this game right now is just way too difficult between Bomb, Obsidian Dagger, Star Strike that drops from the Naga, the movement speed ping that happens from the beacon, just all of these things that you can't pick up if you're stuck with this Chalice. In addition to having your health chalice, which you should probably have all the time. So I think personally this item is unbuildable. It's kind of unfortunate, but warding chalice is going in D tier. Sentry wards, again, like regular wards, like this is our bread and butter. We have to be buying wards. We have to be buying sentry wards. Sometimes we're the only ones that can step up and really place them. That being said, though, sometimes we're the only ones that can step up and place regular wards. Maybe your backliners, since they're not walking up as far, they should be buying the sentry wards, but good luck convincing them of that. Sentry wards are definitely S tier. We should be buying them as frequently as possible. All right, health chalice, this is a quick S tier. Healing in this game is just so strong. Especially in lane, if the other support has chalice and you don't, you will be losing lane. We should be buying chalice every single game, holding on to it as long as possible. I think it's okay to drop it. If you're stuck with a chalice and a bomb, or a chalice and Star Strike or something like that, I think it's probably time to sell the chalice and start buying wards because we have to be buying wards. But we should be trying to hold on to our chalice as long as possible. Mana potions, we're never buying these unless we're Apollo using mana pots right before we ult out of base. That's the only reason to buy it ever. Multi potions, I think we should be buying 2 multi potions every game. And it's when you go into the lane the first time. So you buy your health chalice, you get your 2 multi pots, you fight in lane. I think that's kind of the best way to do it. So for that reason, S tier, I think we're buying it every game. Okay, so really quickly here, we're just gonna jump onto Twitter X, and we're gonna look at Blues Ultra's breakdown of the most recent Titan talk. This isn't gonna have everything in it, isn't gonna have all the details, but I think it's a pretty good place to look for what's coming in the upcoming patches. So you can read this, you can pause the video, read this, but we're not gonna talk about this. And so here's kind of the major change for Conquest specifically. If we look down here at the Conquest role passes, each role in Conquest now has a bonus passes specific to it. These are tied to whatever role is assigned during God Select. So you can read them all on screen. You can kind of see what's going on. But I think the big difference is for support that now the support role just has the gold spooling tied to its role. So what that's going to mean is that the support starters themselves are going to shift a little bit, and they're not going to necessarily have this passive on it anymore. This is going to open up the options for support to pick a bunch of different starters and still retain that really, really strong gold spooling. So we can jump over the next sheet here, and you can see the starter item stat overhaul. They're completely redoing a lot of these. You can read them, go through them, pause the video, but just looking specifically at Heroism and War Banner, basically the only difference is that now these upgrades you don't get until level 20. So effectively, these items are super nerfed because we're getting the gold, which is kind of the OP part of the starters, just by our role passive. We don't necessarily have to buy the support starters to get that. So I think we'll see a lot of new starter item diversity, especially in support, but I think probably across the roles it's going to change a lot. But I'm not going to make any predictions quite yet. I kind of want to play on it, test some stuff out, and really decide what I think is best. If you guys have any ideas, please let me know in the comments. But yeah, that's about it. So if you like this video, if you learned something, if you disagree with me, if you agree with me, please let me know in the comments. Leave a like, sub if you keep wanting to see more videos like this. Hearing, that this is a helpful video and a good use of my time and it's useful for everybody, that'll make me, make even more videos. So please let me know, leave a like, leave a comment, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.